Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to Bollington to you all, civic dignitaries, Mr. Rutley, fellow councillors and guests. After having to run last year's civic service virtually, it means so much to me and my fellow councillors to be able to gather here today and have our civic hall bustling. Many thanks also to those who took part in the parade and to the brass band for leading us, and to the rain for holding off. Today's civic service is lower key than previous years to ensure we do our best to be COVID safe. We hope you all enjoy the speakers and the interesting readings. As I approached the start of my mayoral year, people began to ask me what my theme and focus would be during my year in office. After reflection, I realised it could only be inclusivity and equality. I've strived for both throughout my life, and at times have come across resistance and prejudice, which has only made me more determined, pushing against barriers. It was through this determination to make changes that I became involved in politics a few years ago. I didn't feel represented, and I wanted to try and do something to improve that feeling for myself and for others who share my values. Becoming a councillor here in Bollington was a natural progression, and in my role in the Town Council, it is essential to me personally to be accessible to everyone and as relatable to those we represent as I could possibly be. During my time as Mayor, I have an opportunity to bring my values to our wider community and hopefully to influence Council to be as inclusive as we can be. Beyond this year, it is important to me that as a Council we strive continually for equality, learn and do better with the language we use, swap to gender-neutral terminology and feel confident in those values. Only by truly taking equality into our core do we become fully representative of our town and the people who live, work and visit here. One of our first steps along this journey to better representation will be to fly the Pride flag at the Town Hall every June from 2022. I've appointed Charlotte Simpson as my chaplain this year, as an essential part of my inclusivity theme. Chaplains are traditionally of a faith, and in appointing a non-denominational chaplain, I hope to ensure those of all faiths and those of non-faith feel included. We've added a further theme today of community. Much of my time in council has been witnessing the world struggling through a global pandemic. It has been difficult to watch the inequalities around the world directly affecting numbers of lives lost. And yet here in our small town, we have shone in the face of adversity. Streets coming together to look after their vulnerable neighbours, a caring and sensible approach and a strong set of shared values has seen us have low case numbers and few losses. It is important to realise every loss is someone's loved one, and the council hopes to create a permanent memorial in time where those who wish to can reflect on this period in our community's life. In summary, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today, and a special thanks to all those who agreed to speak and participated in the parade. Please enjoy the readings. I hope everyone finds them thought-provoking and perhaps even a little challenging. As we leave, I would be thrilled if we all reflect on ways to incorporate the themes of today's service into our daily lives. Many thanks for joining us. I'll now hand over to Charlotte.
Thank you, Jo, and I'd like to begin by echoing your warm welcome to every one of you who's come along today. It really is good to see you all here in person. Civic Sunday marks the official start of the Mayor's term of office, and this is our first chance to come together and welcome our new Mayor, Councillor Johanna, and I know that you'll all join me in wishing her well for the years to come. Jo's got a really clear vision what she wanted to achieve during her time as mayor. And this service is a chance for us all to reflect on the themes she's asked us to think about: community, equality and inclusivity. I don't think there's been a time in recent memory when there was more need for us to look out for our neighbours. And the people of Bollington really rose to the challenge. From key workers living and working here to the volunteers who leapt straight into action within days of the first lockdown to get help where it was needed fast. To get help where it was needed fast, to the school children who missed out on so much to keep their grandparents safe. It's been humbling to see the sacrifices that so many of us have made, not just to protect our friends and families, but also strangers who we'll probably never meet. It's been hard, but we have done ourselves proud. And now, as we hope, we start to recover from those hardest times and get back to normal. Where does that leave us? What mark will the pandemic have made on Bollington's history? Wouldn't it be amazing if we emerged from this storm, and as we emerged from this storm, we grew even stronger as a community? And if that wonderful spirit of working together to make sure no one gets forgotten took us somewhere new? After all, storms make trees take deeper roots. As the first non-religious person to take on this chaplain role, I thought I should draw on wisdom from a range of scholars and philosophers. So that quote is straight from Dolly Parton's Twitter feed. And let's remember, though, that Dolly Parton isn't just an international icon with a sidelining motivational quotes. She's also been a lifelong humanitarian and someone who's never turned her back on the community where she herself grew up. Dolly and her 11 siblings grew up dirt poor, she says, in the mountains of East Tennessee. But the traditions, the stories and the people that she grew up alongside stayed with her, despite the poverty and the hardships they endured together, or maybe because of them. So when, as an adult, Dolly found herself in a position to give something back to the world, she started by helping her own people. In 1995, she launched her Imagination Library, a charity giving free books to children in her home county. But the old adage that charity begins at home certainly does not mean that charity should end at home. Well, the work of the Imagination Library gradually spread right across the United States and beyond. And today, Dolly's programme gives over 1 million free books to children around the world every month. In her words, the seeds you plant in your community can grow across the world. Which brings me back to Bollington. What seeds can we plant here? How far could they spread? We might not have pockets as deep as Dolly Parton's, but we do here have ideas and energy and an abundance of people who care. So with our community, through our community, we can make a difference, not just to the people who live in Bollington, but beyond it. And we have to. Of course, we need action on the ground when we're facing a challenge here, but local action alone often isn't enough. When many of our roads and buildings were hit by severe flooding in 2019, it was wonderful to see the bravery, kindness and grit. People who put themselves at risk to get help to everyone who needed it, took in their neighbours and got stuck in with the clean-up operation when water went down. But we all know that if we want to feel safe in our community, if we want our children and their children to be able to enjoy living here as much as we do, then we need to work together with the global community to find a global solution to the climate emergency. And I think one of the strengths of the citizens of Bollington is that they do see that big picture, especially when it comes to the safety of our planet. And maybe what COVID has reinforced for us is that we can't draw a line between our local neighbours and our neighbours on the other side of the world. Our fates are inextricably linked. No man with an island in Shire itself wrote John Donne 400 years ago. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main, and any man's death diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind. To be involved in mankind is to see community as both local and global. We can find a way to give something back to our community. We shouldn't limit our ambition. We live in a thriving town in one of the richest countries in the world. We are absolutely in a position to aim high. Now, I know that the language of privilege can be divisive, and we all have our private battles, and almost all of us who've experienced, maybe continue to experience, bad luck or discrimination or hardships that can be truly incapacitating. Battles we're all struggling with in our homes, our jobs, our families, our personal life. These are often what get in the way of our ability to involve ourselves in our community. I know personally, mum, small business owner, a wife, a daughter, and I think, as Jo will attest, someone who really struggles with time management and organisation. But I feel a bit of a fraud, to be honest, talking to you about the importance of contributing to your community when there's so much that I want to do and fail to do. And sometimes we are in no position to get involved. Sometimes we need to ask for support and not give anything back, and that's okay. But as a community living here in Bollington, we are lucky. As the editor of the Sunday Times Best Places to Live in the UK list, where we seem to feature year after year, compared to the rest of the UK, this area experienced low crime, deprivation, and by almost every measure, health, education, employment, income, we're doing all right, more than all right. And this is a wonderful place to live, and what's more, we are safe here. And as we've watched the pictures from Afghanistan over the last few weeks, how many of us haven't thanked our lucky stars that, however imperfect we might believe it to be, we live in a democracy. And as we see images of displaced families who are so desperate to be reunited with each other, to escape war, persecution, violence, or acute food insecurity, are so desperate that entrusting their lives to rickety boats and unscrupulous people smugglers seems like the least terrifying option. Don't we all feel a moment of gratitude that we have never had to make such impossible choices ourselves? And so when we talk of community, there can't really be any distinction between them and us. There is no our community and then everyone else. Either you believe in community or you don't. And if you believe in community, which I'm pretty sure every person in this room does, or you wouldn't be here, then it doesn't matter if you're reaching out your hand to help your elderly neighbour escape her flooded home, or if you're reaching halfway around the world with your voice, your time, or your money to help your neighbour in South Sudan, who's also facing flooding, as well as conflict, famine, and economic crisis, and the rampant spread of COVID. And that brings me to Jo's central theme of inclusivity. There can be no them and us in the communities who need our help, and there must also be no them and us among those of us who work together to offer our help. Imagine what we could achieve here in Bollington if everyone got involved. Imagine the ideas, the expertise, the experience we would all gain from if everyone who lived here felt included, valued, and confident enough to bring their skills and talents to the table. Some of the people in this room give huge amounts of time to this community, but why do some of us volunteer and others never even consider it? Why do some people come along to just one meeting? Whether it's a child school PTA or some other community or activism group, they come to one meeting and then they never go back. And what about the people who didn't even know the meeting was happening in the first place, or people who never would have dared to set foot inside because they just had a feeling that it wasn't people like them? I really think that the greatest challenge we face here in Bollington as a society and as a species is how to connect with each other meaningfully so that we can work together to do the things that are in all of our interest. Somehow we've got to move beyond the barriers of identity and belonging, tribal loyalties, fixed ways of thinking, flawed communication. We've got to solve the urgent and existential problems that we ourselves created, and we'll only do it together. The most pressing and intractable crises that we're dealing with didn't just come out of nowhere. Conflict, terrorism, environmental degradation, which is the root cause, I'm sure you know, of the increasing risk of both extreme weather events and global pandemics. All of these crises are a product, the actions of humanity. And who here would disagree that throughout most of human history, power has been concentrated in the hands of far too few, and that power has been distributed hugely disproportionately in the hands of a very narrow subset of the full, glorious diversity of humanity. And over the last few centuries in particular, how many societies have been shaped to protect the interests of most often rich, able-bodied, straight, gender-conforming white men, shaped by them and for them. And long, this is important to say, long may we continue to welcome and celebrate the achievements of straight white men, both here in Bollington and throughout human history. They are, of course, just as likely to be gifted, brilliant, compassionate and brave as anyone else. Just as likely, but no more likely. And the problems we're facing are huge. Time is running out and we need our best team. We need to put the best qualified, the most talented, the most outstanding thinkers and doers on the case. And if you're looking for a needle in a haystack, it doesn't make any sense to throw 3/4 of the hay out the window before you even start. Building an inclusive community is going to be hard work. Paying lip service to equal opportunities isn't enough to break down barriers that have been keeping people out of the conversation for centuries. It's everyone's task to start listening, reading, learning about the lives of people whose unique human experiences don't mirror our own. All need to engage, ask questions, think creatively and open our minds to new ways of flinging the doors and windows wide open and making space for all the talents. How amazing would it be if the legacy of the pandemic here in Bollington could be that we see just what we can achieve when we work together. Let's come out of this storm with deeper and stronger roots drawn from the whole community and a common purpose to get the important work done here in our community and far beyond it.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I'm delighted to invite our local Member of Parliament, Mr. David Rutley, MP, to come and share a reading with us. I'm sure you'll all join me in giving him a warm welcome.
Readings from Baratunda Thurston on how to citizen. Citizening is the difference. All that we are experiencing was made by people. People who showed up and wielded power to get what they want. Our system is predicated on people power. That's literally what democracy means. So it's up to us, by definition, to claim our power and use it in ways that work for us. It's always been people who have made the difference. It's people who came up with the story of white supremacy that still holds us all hostage today. And it's also people who came up with the story of equal protection under the law. It's just people at the end of the day. It's just us. And the despair so many of us understandably experience is not permanent. It is never permanent because we are creative beings. And we always have the potential to create a new narrative and a new reality. History feeds my hope because there have been better people than us, working harder than we can imagine, with fewer resources than we've ever had, who have committed to the pursuit of justice and the project of self-government. People have bled, died, sang, written, danced, marched, voted, cooked, and loved so hard on behalf of all of us. I honour that history, believing that we who have the privilege to live now have the opportunity and obligation to contribute what we can to this multi-generational journey, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Rutley, and thank you for making the effort to be here today. I really appreciate the support we've got from you throughout the events. That reading, by the way, by Baratunda Thurston was taken from a recent interview he gave, But if you are interested in his ideas, have a listen to his podcast. It's called How to System. Done loads of inspiring interviews all about people power, themes like engaging young people on combating division and finding common ground. Some of the episodes are quite specific to an American context, but most of them are, I think, relevant to anyone, so it's worth listening. If you're not sure how to listen to a podcast, find me afterwards and I'll show you. Anyway, on that theme of understanding the word citizen as a verb as well as a noun, I'm going to come to the participatory element of today's service. When Joe and Emma and I were talking about how to do an inclusive Thanksgiving service that doesn't centre on one particular religious faith, we talked about the value that Christians get from participating in church services, whether it's singing together or taking communion or sharing the peace with a hug or a handshake. And for various reasons, none of those rituals are appropriate here today, but we did want everyone who's made the effort to come here to feel part of what we're doing. So we've come up with the idea of a citizen's pledge. You'll find a piece of paper about that under your chair. So this is an opportunity for you to think about what you personally can give to your community during the year ahead. I'm not talking about starting a charity or doing a sponsored bike ride to John O'Groats or committing hours and hours of time you don't have to do something you won't enjoy. Do those things if you want, but that's not what I'm thinking of. Just as a starting point, think small. Think of something that matters to you, something that uses your particular strengths and skills, something that will contribute to our community, be that here in Bollington or the global community, either by drawing on your own skills or by helping to make our community more open, more inclusive, and a place where other talents can shine. It could be as small as having a conversation with a friend who's not as involved in the community as they could be and just listening to them. You can find out what the barriers are that stop them feeling as if the community spirit of Bollington is there for them. When you listen and understand the obstacles, maybe you can help. Maybe that person has problems getting around and needs you to offer them a lift somewhere, or if that person is limited by a mental health condition or, I don't know, a neurodiversity like autism that makes it hard for them to make long-term commitments or hard to walk into an unfamiliar space on their own or an unfamiliar situation, you could offer to go with them. Maybe that person doesn't have the privilege of walking into one of our public spaces and knowing that they'll find it full of people who look and sound like them. When you do walk through life, being in the majority, whether that's through ethnicity, sexuality, gender identity, ability, by which I mean the absence of disability, but I can't find a word for that, you get the idea. When you walk through life without having to worry whether you'll fit in or not, it's natural to have no idea how the other half live. But when we ask and when we listen, maybe we can help, or just give that friend or neighbour a big dose of encouragement and inspiration and remind them of the strength and power that you see in them. Remind them of the value of their unique talents. I don't know about you, but if you pay me a few compliments and tell me how much you need me, I'll agree to almost anything, which is incidentally how Joe persuaded me to take on this chaplain role, I think. Anyway, that is your task. Think about what you personally can do, what you're genuinely willing and able to do, however small, and make your citizens' pledge. Got these pieces of paper here today. If you can think of something before you leave, then you can write it down and drop it in the box. There's going to be a box by the door. But if you do need a bit more time, Emma's going to put a form on the Town Council website so you can have a think and then add your pledge in your own time. Maybe see who else you can encourage to make their own pledge too. Now, I'm going to hand over to the Mayor's Youth Consort, Erin. She's got a reading to share with you.
This is community. Our souls will not be soothed by what we achieve, how we look, hard work. Even if we manage to make all the money in the world, we'd be left feeling empty. Our souls ache for community. Our deepest being craves one another. We need to be connected to
so much, Erin. When we think about people who are already working to make our community more welcoming, more inclusive, to make our little corner of Cheshire a place where everyone feels safe and valued, and where our children can grow up knowing that whoever they are, they're free to be themselves. I honestly can't think of any organisation that's done more, and in a very short space of time, than Macclesfield Pride. We held the first event in 2018, and the group has grown in strength and numbers every year since. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you now Denise Hartley-Dickens, who's the chair of Macclesfield Pride. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Can I just say that in inviting me to speak here today, you've already made your first steps towards a new level of inclusion and inclusivity in your town and your community. So thank you for that. This isn't the scariest thing I've done today. This morning, I auditioned for a pantomime. Okay. But it is by far the most important thing that I've done today. It doesn't matter whether I get a role in the pantomime, although I do think I'm quite well equipped for the Wicked Witch. When I became chair of Macclesfield Pride 3 years ago, we set as our vision, our mission statement for Macclesfield Pride, that in our community, which of course includes Bollington and surrounding areas, not just the town of Macclesfield, that we would promote equality and celebrate diversity. It goes very well hand in hand with what you're trying to do here, and what I know that you are already well equipped to do from what I've heard so far today. And when I was asked to speak on the theme of inclusivity, I realised that it's actually quite hard to spot sometimes. What's much easier to spot is exclusion. And it's when you spot the exclusion that you know how you need to work on the inclusion. As part of Macclesfield Pride 2021, our Out and About event in July, we held a Pride Poets Corner. Never been done before, but we tried something new. Quite a selfish thing to do, really, because I love writing, reading, performing and hearing poetry, so I thought I'd go for it to see what happened. We had a really good turnout in a coffee shop in the centre of Macclesfield from people of all ranges of our diverse community, LGBTQ community, people from the council, we had trans representation, we had just anybody who wanted to make their feelings, their views, their opinions about pride and inclusion and equality known through the medium of poetry. It's actually a little bit easier sometimes than speaking. I think if I was about to tell you now why I'm chair of Macclesfield Pride and what led me to that point in the realm of exclusion, I might be thinking, oh, this is very personal. But as soon as I put it into an art form, it takes the edge off that slightly, but also I hope will stick with you a little bit longer. My poem is called Longing to Belong. I've been excluded from the moment I was born. It's likely that you were too. For me, it started as simply as this: being born in the gender that history dismissed. Cleopatra, Boadicea and Helen of Troy made their mark on the world, despite not being a boy. But the division remains and we still hear the tale. Girls can't do that. Was it a female? I made it to school days, and there I excelled, different and damned as the average kids yelled, "You're a swat, you're a geek, goody two shoes." And to make matters worse, to add to my blues, I was excluded from the subset on the Venn diagram of life, entitled teenagers lucky enough to have perfect eyesight. Becky Four Eyes, they whispered, for those were the days when the wearing of spectacles was not a full praise. Excluded for being oh so rubbish at sport, or for being too successful at the subjects being taught. Exclusion at school isn't just being expelled, it happens within the setting itself. It's cruel and it's needless, and if only we knew that the longing to belong didn't make you the one in the wrong. My wings had been grown, I believed I could fly to places unseen where nobody knew me, and I could try to break free from the perverse and destructive longing to belong. to a fellowship of those who got me so wrong. I failed to take account of the importance of vows. After 2 decades plus, the North still greets me with scowls. Still a foreigner, teased for being southern and posh as I walk on the path through the grass. Oh my gosh! But that matters little. It's not serious stuff. Surely I was in now. Had I done enough? Sensible job, got married, had children, towed the line, fit in, adapt, adjust, evolve. Over time, the longing to belong wanes. You find your own space. Maybe even becoming a bit of a bore, until one day I made a leap which shocked my world to the core. A paradigm shift of epic proportions. You've done what, really? No. Was followed by cautions of the danger of leaving the safety of being a good actor and taking a leap into, well, you guessed this chapter. You can see who I am, what I stand for in life. I've got the t-shirt, and so has my wife. I unashamedly stand here and proudly declare that this time I chose the exclusion, the stairs. A decade ago, it wasn't this easy to stand up with pride and deal with the glares. Time has been kind and changes have come, which for people like me have been hard won by those coming before us on whose shoulders we stand. But even so, there are times when you realise with pain that you willingly put yourself in the minority again. This time, the exclusion was the price I chose to pay as an act of love to myself and the one who smiles back at me at the end of each day. I didn't want to belong to all those groups anymore. Trying to fit in is really a bore. They all thought they knew me and gave me the labels. It kind of feels good to have turned the tables. I am all of those people in my history. But all that matters now is I'm happy to be me. Your story will be different. How were you excluded? More importantly, how will you make others included? It matters what I say. It matters what I do. It matters to the future, and it should matter to you. That the generations to come can sing a new song. Because in one way or another, we are all longing to belong.
Thank you so much, Denise, and we're so happy that you could join us, and we'd love to build more links with Macclesfield Pride and support what you're doing. I would now like to invite the Vicar of Bollington, Reverend Nancy Goodrich, to come and lead us in some prayer.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for saying to include faith in this service and not exclude it. It's lovely. It's lovely to be here. I was reflecting, probably the last time I was in here, I was in this room, I was in the Girl Guides a long while ago. But now I'm the new Vicar of Bollington, only been here a few weeks, and I'm just delighted to be here and to pray for Bollington. I'm going to lead these prayers now. If you want to take part in them, you may. You do not have to, of course. It is an invitation to do so. The response, because there'll be our prayers if you want to take part, the response to generous God is pour out your love. Generous God, pour out your love. So let us pray to God, Creator, Redeemer and Sustainer, God of creation. Pray for the beauty of nature, for the earth in which we live. We pray for the humility and will to share it and conserve it. Generous God, pour out your love. God of grace, we pray for the nations of the world, for Elizabeth, our Queen, for all in authority, particularly praying for all who serve in public office, and especially here in our local community. We pray,
God, for your wisdom, justice, peace and harmony. May it grow and flow. Generous God, pour out your love. God of transformation, we pray for this community. We pray for Bollington. In doing so, we just pray now for our neighbours. And I'll just invite you to, each of you, whether you live here or not, just pray for someone who lives near you. You might not even know their name. Loving God, pour out your transforming spirit on the whole community. Stir the hearts of all people, young and old. Raise us up in action to make a difference, to help others, to transform lives. Where there is division, sickness or sorrow, may you bring in reconciliation, wholeness, healing and joy. We pray that you will keep us faithful to the pledges, the citizen pledges we make this day. Generous God, pour out your love. God, you are a God of inclusive welcome and compassion for all. You know each of us better than we know ourselves, knowing our needs and our cares. And so we just now pray for whatever it is on our hearts at this moment. What is deep on our hearts, our insecurities, the challenges we face, people we care about. God, place deep in our hearts to set us free. Take our small lives and flood them with your great glory, to shine as beacons in the world. Generous God, pour out your love. Invite you now, if you'd like to, but you don't have to pray together the prayer that Jesus taught, using whatever language or version you prefer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Reverend Nancy, and welcome to our community and to meet you. And it is wonderful to have you here and to know the important work that our local Christian communities are already doing in this community. We are coming here now. I'd like to thank everyone who's played part in our service today, our speakers, David Rutley, Aaron Vincent, Lee Hartley-Dickens, and Reverend Nancy Goodrich. Of course, our new Mayor, Johanna Maitland. And a huge thank you is due to Emma Bamberg, the events and Mayor officer, who has done so much planning this service. So much. Actually, to make sure it would run safely as well. It just wouldn't have happened without Emma, so thank you. Thanks to everyone for coming along and bringing such a positive atmosphere to this event. Please don't forget to have a think about your citizens' pledges. Drop them off as you leave if you've already managed to fill them in. Going to close now with just a minute of quiet reflection. We're going to think about the themes of community and inclusivity and what they might mean in our own lives. If inspiration strikes you during our reflection and you suddenly think of something that you can do personally, then by all means write down your Christian pledge now, quickly, before you forget it. But you can use this reflection time however you want to You might want to remember people who you know who lost during the pandemic. You might want to remember 20 years and one day after the atrocity of 9/11, people who lost their lives that day, and everyone who continues to live under the shadow of that tragedy, the families, survivors, firefighters, and also the Muslim communities across the world who live with consequences of seeing their peace-loving faith so horribly abused. Or you might reflect more broadly on the global and local challenges we talk about today, or use this time to focus your thoughts and your goodwill on just one person, one family, one community you know of who's suffering or struggling right now. So we'll just take that moment of quiet now. Thank you, everybody. Now, if you are able to stand, could I ask you to join us now in standing for the national anthem, which is played on a screen for reasons of COVID safety by the Bollington Brass Band. And as we leave the building today, there's going to be a collection for the Mayor's two chosen charities, the Pink Ribbon Foundation and Regen Centre. I'm afraid we're not encouraging any public singing, but let's enjoy the music now.